never going back to my homeland is not something I expected, and the fighting with the Chinese government is also not something I expected. But in 2017, things just got weird.
This is Uyghur Stories. Stories from the Uyghur diaspora. Hello, John.
Hi, Mukaddas. How are you?
Good. And you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. I'm really excited to be here doing another episode with you.
Yeah, it has been a while. So,
It's been a little while.
yeah, let's dive into it. Today, I want to talk about activism, although we have been really focused on culture, language, poetry, arts. But I think it's important for us as well to talk about people who are active in the community because it's a huge part of Uyghur diaspora as well. There's also a lot of concerns in the diaspora of being active or not being active, how to be active, and why become active. I know a lot of people, they have been silent about Uyghur issue in the diaspora, even though they live in free countries, democratic countries, and even they have already have passports of all these Western countries. They still have this fear of talking about Uyghur crisis and talking about what's happening in Uyghur region. Um, I think it's something really um, interesting to talk about because like a lot of people like myself, we came to Europe to study, to have a life, to be a part of this multicultural world, and suddenly we were pushed to become active. We were pushed to become to speak out about injustice. So that transition is really hard to realize and also hard to decide whether you want to be someone who will speak out about injustice happening to Uyghur people.
Yeah, that's a common thing that I've heard from people in the diaspora who maybe didn't expect to be politically active, didn't expect to take on that role, but for one reason or another, maybe for very personal reasons, you know, situations with family members and so forth, felt compelled to start raising their voice and, trying to make the most of, like you were saying, being in a country where you can say the things that you want to say without fear. But I'll note that the fear is still there, right? It's still very real for people, even if they are in a country, even if they're outside of China. Is that right?
Yeah, the fear of repercussion about your families who's still living inside of China and of your friends still living in China is very present. It's inside of everyone's heart. I think like a lot of people, also a lot of young people who are really suffering from this traumatic situation, who wants to speak out but they cannot because they want to protect their family. So that kind of fear is like pursuing a lot of people that I know, my friends who's living with me and some people that I'm working with. And also the fear of yourself, I think, fear of being targeted by the Chinese government and targeted by some forces. That's something that really real as well. They are afraid of putting themselves out there and be the target because they speak against what's happening to Uyghurs in Uyghur region. So today's episode actually is about this transition, about how some young people never thought of being an activist, one day waking up, becoming activists?
This is a fascinating topic to me. And, I think a lot of people, especially young people, um, find there's almost like a central moment that they can point to and say, this thing happened to me, and I realized I had a choice, and this is what I chose to do. And so I'm really excited to hear these stories from some young people like that in the Uyghur diaspora. So who do we have first?
We have Akida. She's the daughter of Rahile Dawut. Rahile Dawut, she is one of the brilliant anthropologists, folklorists who worked for Xinjiang University for many years. She made a PhD dissertation about Uyghur pilgrimage sites, holy sites. She traveled through the southern part of Uyghur region to collect data, to collect informations, and collect stories about all these saint places, and how people worship these saints, and how people went to pilgrimage, and how the whole tradition of being in these holy sites, and the rituals, ceremonies, and she documented all that. And she contribution to Uyghur culture is to have a very deep research based on her fieldwork as an anthropologist. And then she went on working on tales, folkloric tales called dastan. That's also part of this pilgrimage practices that Uyghurs have been doing for centuries. So basically, they will go to a holy site, and then there will be some people reciting the stories of some saints who are buried in these holy sites. And she did a lot of documentation. She did a lot of research on them, and she was a very famous researcher in China. She has been invited to all different uh, like conferences and symposiums around the world. And in 2017, she disappeared.
I came from Urumqi, and I am one of Uyghurs, like everybody knows. So I came to the United States in 2015 for graduation study, and I have been living in here for more than 6 years, I guess, if the calculation is correct. So currently, I am living in Seattle, but I don't know in the futures or next month or next years. But currently, I'm living in Seattle right now.
Yeah, I I know you from when you were still a little child, because I used to go visit your mother in Xinjiang University at your home, and you were a very shy kid. And I know you have a very famous mother, and you have a very strong mother. I remember so clearly the first time I met you in your home, actually, with your mother. And I don't know, you were coming back home from high school or something like that, but you were a fun kid.
Thank you.
So you were born in an intellectual family, if I'm correct. You were born in near Xinjiang University.
Yes, our residential building is located in the Xinjiang University, the campus. So I pretty much grew up in a campus environment, so where everything is very quiet, and my mom went to school every day. I went to school every day like that.
So why did you wanted to come to United States? So how, like, what is your major and why United States?
So I finished my undergraduate study in the mainland China, Beijing, and after that, I have the plans to pursue my master's degrees, and also going abroad for study is pretty sure is my goal, and is something that my family expected me. They want me to go abroad and study, get a good degrees and learn more things. So me and my family member have a mutual goal of going abroad for a study. I remember like maybe 10 years ago, like when I applied for college, like when I finished my high school and apply universities, I wanted to study in Beijing. So instead of just going abroad directly and also thinking about like studying in like finishing my university in the United States might be expensive. So me, I decided to study in Beijing instead, and my family also agrees. And luckily, like I was admitted to my favorite university. So in the third years of my universities, applying for graduation school in US is kind of like a very affirmative goal for me. Like that's what all I this is all I did. Like I studied TOEFL, I studied GMAT, and I did everything for to go abroad.
You came to the United States, you started your studies, and suddenly things changed. We heard that your mother were taken away, and it took you a little bit of time to speak out. I remember that. And what was going on in your mind, like how that transition came? Because, as you said, you came to the United States just with one goal: to study, to have degrees, and to be excellent researcher as your mother, or like to be someone, and to learn how to take care of yourself. And how things changed and what happened in you, deep inside of you. So how that transition came.
That's a very complicated transitions and very complicated long stories, and I believe that it's still transitioning, like it's still changing. So things started to change in 2017. Before that, I was fortunate enough to not witnessing the atrocity of the government. I used to spend all of my time just in a campus environments. I went to Han Chinese school and I went to Beijing for study. Even in Beijing, I was just to stay in my campus and like spend time with my Han Chinese friends around me, classmates around me. Everything is just normal. So I was kind of a girl that is like, government is okay. Like I know I as a Uyghurs, I faced some discriminations. I faced some weird things, but it's okay. Government is okay. So I was when I first came to the United States for studies, I don't have any interest in politics. So I believe in governments also. Like I was thinking myself as just like others international students. So after finishing my study, I might stay here to work for a while, or I might go home and find a job at mainland China or Urumqi. Like never going back to my homeland is not something I I expected, and the fighting with the Chinese government is also not something I expected. I also don't know much about politics at that time. Before 2017, the only news I read is something related to my majors or what's happening in the US, or like I didn't have a Twitter at that time. and I did have a Facebook or some other social media, but I only used that to scroll some cat pictures or music or movie. But in 2017, things just got weird. I started to hear the story about Uyghur being detained in the airport. I was like, what the hell is that? So why is that happen? I have no idea, but I just heard story about Uyghur being detained, and in 2017, the Uyghur password was confiscated, and my mother password was confiscated. I was shocked. Like, why? If I went abroad like 2 years later and my passwords got confiscated, I will be furious. Like, this is my thought. Like, so, and also like our conversations through WeChat became weird too. Like, whenever I say something weird, or whenever I say something like my mother at that time before she detains, and she will just like shut me up using these signals.
So she will put her hand in front of her mouth saying like, don't say anything.
Yeah. So it's at first things getting weird, and then I started to hear some professor being detained, people being sent to education camp, and I was just like, what's going on? Until just at one point in 2017 December, my mother was she just disappeared. I have no idea. So at first I was like, is there a airplane like an accidents or
Your crush, yeah.
anything happened on her way to Beijing, or car accidents? I thought about all the bad scenario. I asked my grandparents, my grandmother, and my father, but it doesn't look like something so tragic happened. It looked like something sad happened, but not so tragic. They are like normal, but they are like nervous, maybe. Like at first, it's like that, and then things getting worse and worse, and my life was also changed. Like, I from someone who don't know anything about politics, and someone who stays silent all the times, and someone even like say Communist Party is good, and I am a Chinese, something like that. Like, from someone from here to someone who started to spoke up, and right now someone who made activism as her main career right now.
Wow. It's a major shift. It's it's a lot for someone so young as you are, so brave as you are, to experience. And it is happening to a lot of people, I know. And I mean, this kind of position, being an activist, it was none of ours business, and then we never thought like we will be put into this kind of position, even pushed into this kind of position to speak up and to be active. And so what's next for you? What is the future? So you said you're a full-time activist right now. So that's your career. What are you doing?
So currently my career is full-time activist. If you ask me my future, I want my futures to be better, of course, but in terms of my careers, it's really hard for me to say something like I will become activist forever, or I will stop my activisms and go back to my career. It's hard to say because right now the situation is changing, and I never expected me myself to be a full time activist just 1 years ago. So everything is so unclear for me right now. So the only thing I can say is I try my best to just make my day meaningful and try to make the best decision. So let's see what's going on.
I wish you all the best, and I'm really like, your mother is in our mind every day. I'm not the only one, because I know like there's a lot of researchers, there's a lot of friends of your mother's. We're thinking about her all the time. I sometimes dream about her. I had this very weird dream once, like in the beginning. I was walking on the street and I was like, oh, I don't know, this is so stressful. Like the atmosphere was so stressful, and your mother, I saw your mother in my dream passing by with someone behind her, and she hugged me so strongly and then said, go out, go back to France. And I know that that's who she is. I mean, she will protect anyone else with her life. And thank you very much for being here, sharing your story. And I hope you will see your mother soon again. And if you want us to share any information about your activism, about your mother, please let us know and tell us where we can find your activism.
So I would right now. I worked for Campaign for Uyghurs, and I also have my website on my mother's, which is called freemymom.org. I put every media updates about my mother and what how things going on my website. Pretty much my like you can find my mother's work and my mother news about my mother on this website. Also, I am active on the Twitters. I raised awareness every day on Twitter. So if there is any update about my mom, I will post it on Twitter to raise more awareness. So people can contact me on the Twitters.
It's really inspiring to hear Akida's story and the way she has taken on so much responsibility and is doing so much, not just for her mother, but for so many people like her mother. And it's you described her in the conversation as brave, and I couldn't agree more. You also mentioned during your conversation that you knew Rahila a little bit. Do you have any other stories or memories about her?
Yeah, I think I met her several times. Like I grew up in the same neighborhood that um, Rahile Dawut was living with her family, and also like the things that I remember the most from her is like how generous she was with scholars who, like, you can ask any scholar in the West, like in United States or in France, like every scholars who had achieved some really great results uh, are really related to Rahila, and she was this generous Uyghur scholar who was receiving everyone and helping them, sometimes even sharing the students that she had to be with these scholars and then do some translation work or like bring them to some places. And she really helped shape the Uyghur studies, actually. A lot of researchers, they all know Rahila, they all know her work, and they all like benefited from her generosity and also her position as a professor in Xinjiang University. And that's why there's a lot of people spoke up um, about her case, and there are researchers are really relentlessly trying to make her case known. Um, and also, I remember bringing my teacher, my PhD supervisor, to her office, and she was so generous to show us like video, audio documents, and it was really unusual because in the field, yeah, you need like there's this kind of like you have these datas and you don't want to share them like easily with strangers, but she was like so enthusiastic about Uyghur studies. Like she wanted people to come and do field work and study Uyghur culture before it disappears. So she was a visionary as well. Like she understood that if people will not study it quickly, this beautiful culture would eventually vanish.
She sounds like a really amazing person, and obviously her absence is felt extremely strongly across the diaspora, and of course, in Akida's life, but in the lives of many other people, professors and other academics who got to work with her, like you're saying, and it's impossible for us to talk about activism in this context without talking about the trauma that the very things that people are fighting against is causing. And unfortunately, the trauma of the crisis on family members, like Akida, but also people who have friends and loved ones still in the Uyghur region, is such a unfortunately present, a strong aspect of the Uyghur diaspora.
Yeah. I would describe Uyghur diaspora as a diaspora who's trapped in trauma, because the news are coming from the homeland are not good. It's always bad news. It's always traumatic. It's always very, for me, it's always very ugly. Like it's really dark and ugly. And sometimes I cannot open my Facebook page and look on it and see all this bad news. And it's a stress. It's always a stress. And the Uyghur diaspora is stressed out because there's no hope and there's no good news and there's only bad news coming out. And for those who, in this context, sometimes it's really complicated to hear different voices, different opinions, because everyone feels like, oh, we're so suffering, so we need to have only one voice and only one way of seeing things, which is also causing a lot of pain, because human beings will not all have one opinion and one way of seeing things, because humans are different. Like everyone is different, so everyone will have a different opinion. You cannot force a whole community to think alike and be alike and always say the same thing and always look alike. So my next guess is someone a little bit different in the diaspora. Someone is, I would say, controversial, because people have been questioning his intentions, even some work that he has been doing to raise awareness about the Uyghur community. And he has a different religious belief, and that also caused some kind of questioning and discomfort in Uyghur diaspora. And also that caused probably him as well to behave in a certain way, which was not well received by the rest of the Uyghur diaspora. So I don't want to get into too much about this controversy, John. But I just want to mention, and I just want to say that there's some dissonance. I don't know, is it a correct English word, around this, my next guest, Halmurat. But I think his story about how he became activist is so powerful. And so not unique, I would say, because a lot of people became activists because they felt they needed to do something urgently because their loved one were endangered.
Okay, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. Thanks for having me in your program. You can call me Halmurat, and my Finnish friends normally call me Harri in Finnish, and in English they sometimes call me Harry, and the others call me John. So I have many different names, but I'm just, I don't know, like the simple Uyghur male who based in Finland. I've been here over 11 years. So I came here to work and study. I left from Xinjiang was 2003. I went to Lanzhou for my bachelor's in the university. Then I went to Thailand to study master's degree in applied linguistic in Pham University. Then I came here. So I don't know, like what else I should tell. Yeah, I'm just a regular person working as a doctor here until like 2017. Like China's policy toward Uyghurs, that had a big shift. So I forced it to become a human rights activist, and that is the actually beginning of my story as a human rights activist. It actually was not something I planned, something I really I'm not ashamed to say that I didn't really want to involve with any kind of this kind of struggles, or I don't call this insurgency, but something like the seen as insurgency by Chinese government. I never planned to become someone like this, but how to say, I just followed my fate. I didn't really have a other chance to escape from my fate, I guess. Yeah.
Can we talk about that moment, that exact moment that you were forced to become an activist?
Let me start from the beginning then. It was like 2017, the beginning of April, when it was my birthday. We have family tradition. When it's my birthday, I call my mom to give thanks to her to bring me to this world, and she blessed me. And when it was 2017, when I called my mom, she didn't pick up the phone. So I called my father, and my father told me that my mom went to study in somewhere like school, more like a boarding school. And I didn't really believe in the beginning, and it took me some time before I confirmed my mom was in the somewhere like the camp, or somewhere like this facility akin to concentration camp. Later I learned it is actually a concentration camp. So then I used all my network within the region. Like there is of course, like I grown up in Turpan. I have so many friends there, like the both ethnic Uyghur and Chinese. I used all this network to contact with everyone that I know, then ask them about my mom's situation and the well-being of my mom. And also I contacted with the local police and the local officers who were responsible for the community where my parents were living. Then they've been so rude to me, I would say, like they verbally abused me. And that was the point I start to lose my confidence on the local authorities, because until 2017 I didn't really have any problem, to be honest. Like I could go back to China, I could go to visit my parents, and I never planned to do anything to be blacklisted by the Chinese authorities. So then I was hoped that my mom could be the released, but after the verbally abused me, then they say don't stick your nose on this matter, so you cannot do anything. Then they kind of threatened me, say you're gonna regret. Then they took my father into one of those concentration camps as well. Then I believe it was a retaliation. Then I gradually, the losing my hope. it took me about a year, like, or maybe over like the 8 months before I start to, to speak up openly. Uh, then that was the point, like when my grandma passed away, didn't allow my father or my mom to bury my grandma. I don't know who buried my grandma. Then that was the point I stand up against the brutality that Chinese government committing upon Uyghur people, the openly. And in the beginning, I didn't really want to become a human rights activist. I just want to free my parents in the beginning, because I didn't really see what was, the things or tragedy other Uyghur people were facing, or other Uyghur families being through. Then later, if you remember, like I started this freedom tour, serial demonstration. We started from the Helsinki. Then I traveled all across Europe. I met with so many Uyghurs. Then I continued my travel to the other part of the world. Like I traveled over 20 some different countries within Europe, Asia, and United States as well. Then I met hundreds of Uyghurs, maybe interviewed. I can't say like hundreds of Uyghurs, but at least like over 100 Uyghur I interviewed. I learned their stories. Then that is the thing actually changed my mind, because from the interviews, from their stories, I learned what I'm being through and what my family being through. It's not something small. It's way bigger than me, or way bigger than what I can imagine. So wanted to, I don't know, like I didn't really want it to be part of something big, but somehow I became, the part of it.
A lot of people in Uyghur region, they're like normal people. They're not religious extremists, as the Chinese government claim. They are not separatists. They're just normal human beings trying to make a living and have a normal life. So could you please share a little bit about that?
So far, until this day, I don't really understand why Chinese government took my parents into this camps. Like according to Chinese governments, they talk those people who have kind of, the be affected by the some sort of religious fundamentalism, or the political, the for example, separatism, or etc. I don't remember anything from my childhood until this day that my parents said, or from their life. Uh, they have they have a kind of ambition, or they have a kind of religious, the, I don't know, like they practice any kind of religion. No, in my memory, my parents more like agnostic, or, well, I know like they believe in God, because, well, maybe it's cultural thing. Sometimes they say like the words, like the other Uyghurs to use in everyday phrases. So it doesn't, it's not something like when they met with other Uyghurs, of course they call Assalamu alaikum, or that's walaikum assalam. That's the normal phrases. But beside that, I never saw them practice anything. And I don't know, like they work it for the government. Like I take my mom as an example. She worked it for the Turpan daily newspaper. It's a Communist Party owned propaganda, the organization. So she propagating, the for the Chinese communist regime for entire her life. At the end, she end up being sent to one of these, uh, I don't know, like the concentration camps. So it's not logical to me. I would say, I don't know. They're not religious. They used to work for the government, and the only thing left is they have a son like me who studied abroad and immigrated to somewhere like Finland. And after their retirement, just like other, the people, like the Chinese people in other part of China, they travel different countries, like they travel to Turkey, Singapore, etc. Then, then being, that being Uyghur, I guess that is the only thing left to be as a target, or the yeah, that's why they are being targeted. I guess that's why. So I don't know if that's the logical explanation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy because this is so important to talk about because so many news around what is going on in for Uyghurs and other Turkic people in this region is like, oh, the Islam is being targeted because there were some um, uh, um, terrorist attacks, and there are some negationists, like there are some people are saying like because Uyghurs had these attacks. So I mean, please come on, come on. Yes, okay, let's say that there have been some attacks, but how about these people? Like, how about your parents? How about my cousins? How about like other people that been detained, which doesn't have anything to do with Islamism and anything to do with terrorism, anything to do with even like they will never pronounce anything, like even they will not dare to think about having a independent country. I mean, they will not even, they will restrict themselves in their mind. They will never think about it. So I mean, this is really important to say and to talk to the world and show them that all these innocent people who's been targeted, put into camps, put into jails, and um, this is like, this is something else. It's not about Islam. This has nothing to do with separatism, and this has nothing to do with extremism, and neither with terrorism, and this has nothing to do with it.
That's insane. I don't mean like any religion should be accountable or responsible for any kind of religious extremism. But just want to make clear, like I'm not even a Muslim, so and I don't think my parents are Muslim as well, because I never saw them practice any religion. And my family is like a multi-religious family. We have Orthodox in my family among my immediate relatives, and we have the Muslim among my immediate relatives, and I myself the baptized Christian since 2004. I don't know, like why the Chinese government targeting the families like me. And yeah, just targeting anyone is wrong. And so I don't know.
It's so, I mean, it's outrageous. So you traveled through different countries, you met with all these people, you collected stories, and you understood actually that you're not alone in this case, and then there are a lot of people. So you decided to take this voice and also to be active and speak out. So you have been in touch with world media and also with activist groups, and you have been quite vocal, and you also started this Me Too Uyghur movement hashtag, so it got viral at one point. And you, as a human being who forced to become an activist, so how are you living this posture of activism, and what is your struggles? And I would like to talk about like emotional struggles of being an activist.
Well, I'd say I if I make this entire story simplified, the thing I did is listen others' story, and then tell it to the others. That's the simple thing I did so far. Like when I traveled to different part of the world, I listened Uyghur story and I collected them in my memory, and some of them I read down. And because I'm not a scholar, I'm not the someone who capable of the making documents. I tried to make documents and I submit all the things to others, but later I used the other scholars prepared materials, so other NGOs prepared the documents, while I met with some decision makers or lawmakers or politicians or diplomats, and basically I told them the stories that people been telling me. And then the people like to hear all these stories, then they start to invite me to the different places, and I mixed my the opinions, and add some of my insights to the stories, and try to make the sense of to the other people about what is happening to the Uyghur people in their homeland. So yeah, that's basically to the media, to the when you talk to the media, it's like being interviewed and they publish it on the different media outlets. And when you talk to the politicians or diplomat, then you can call it advocacy. Then when you talk to the the audience as a panelist in a different universities or different events, so you can be someone like educator. So yeah, like basically I've been doing is like listen stories and tell this to others. The other thing I've been keep doing since 2018 is like beside this online activism, that's maybe 20 or 30% of my entire activism. The other thing is like I keep listening other story because I myself been through a severe depression like 2017 when I learned my mom was detained in one of those concentration camps. I don't really understand what kind of place is that. So then I cannot do anything, and I was so depressed. And when I started doing, this activism, do different kind of, the campaigns, it's more like therapy sessions, so therapeutic, and I'm kind of releasing all this stress. Then there are more stress comes during your, the work or the doing you during you when you carry on all these works like the Chinese government or their the spies or the other people who have different opinions. They kind of try to discourage you or threaten you, and as someone who have very different political ideas and who have a different, even like I am among the Uyghurs are minority in the China compared to Chinese population, but I am minority of Uyghur, like from the religious perspective. So I also being targeted to be discriminated or being neglected by my own community as well. And when I talk about my religious differences, I was being isolated by others or even like jeopardized by some of those people. But I don't know. That's my personal struggle as well. Like I've been really discouraged when I hear my own people say something like, "You cannot represent us because you're different." So that makes me feel so sad. That's all kind of things like the internal struggles, like the from my the psychological struggles, I would say. But yeah, and I carried on this work since 2018, like the Uyghur therapy hotline. I've been keep listening people's stories, and even though I cannot do anything to those people, just listening their stories is make them feel being heard, make them feel like uh, others others really care for them. And some of those people didn't really have a courage like the to speak to the media or openly talk about their the struggle or the things their family being through, and we somehow create a platform for them so they can pour out all this stress to us. And that's another thing, like you always listen people's so sad stories that makes you depressed as well. And yeah, like that all these things, yeah, they've been doing and make me have these problems. But yeah, I'm happy I can be help to other people.
So can you just please first explain a little bit, give a little bit context of this therapy hotline, like what is it and where people can reach out and what does it do, and is it you who put it together?
Well, actually, we started this spontaneously. I didn't really plan to do something like that. Like I told you, like 2018, I started to travel different part of the world, and people got my contact information. And whenever they have something, or they have questions, or they wanna start to do something, or just wanna talk to me, they call me via WhatsApp or the Signal or the Wire or other the contact apps. Then that took a lot of my time, took a lot of my energy. Then I come up with idea that, hey, how about if you make an appointment to me? So for example, the Friday after your Friday prayer, if you want to talk to me like between like the 3 to 4 an hour, or 3 to 3:30 p.m., the half an hour you can talk to me. Then then those people are the people I met face to face, and I know those people are really exist. So then they start to call me, and more people call me, and then I need to have this professional knowledge to how to help those people. Then I find some of my friends who have this professional capability. Then they help me to have a small uh, not the workshop, but kind of thing that they teach me how to deal with the such a situation, or people who have psychological problems. Because what Uyghur people being through since 2017, also Kazakh and others, to being through is unbearable, and it's normal for people who have psychological problems. Then this Uyghur therapy hotline started like that.
It's huge what you're doing. Like, you're not only like taking care of your own pain, you're taking care of so many people's pain. And I don't know how you do that. I mean, I don't know how long you can do that.
I don't know. That's why, like, we have some volunteers. After they've been doing this volunteering work for a while, then they cannot take it anymore. And so, and especially after my Christian identity being exposed, some of my clients even, the how to say, they say something make me feel so upset. But later they come back. One of my client, she say, she told me that she never thought that I could be someone who can be seen as an apostate. And because after she learned, she don't want to talk to me anymore. And I say, okay, I totally understand. But later she come back and she called me again, and she says, she been the receiving this the therapy session, the help, over 2 years. Then after she learned, that I'm not, the worshiping same God as she do, then that was something make her upset. But later she says, then I remember you never talk about the religion, and when you talk to me, you never let me know, or that you're believing in a different religion. Then after I learned, I was afraid that you're going to the spread your religion. Is that why you're continuing doing? I say, do you remember, like, have I ever talked to you about my faith? I say no. And she says, can I ask you, I don't know, I never hear a Christian pray, could you please pray for me? And I say, okay. That's something, the a very big change, the 180 degrees change from not accepting, then start accepting. That's the big change, which means, like, I think it's also therapeutic for her as well. Then she continue to receive our help, because she know, like, she really need that. And she know what we are doing is not because of any religion, or because we want to spread anything related to religion. So, and among our volunteers, there are the Muslims, and there are even atheists, and there are others. So yeah, that was the challenge I was facing after my the Christian identity being exposed as well. So yeah.
But at the same time, I'm relieved that you're going through all these issues. I mean, you're going through with your clients as well, and it's also something that give hope, actually. And this story is really hope, like gives hope, because people have prejudices and they have their own, like, that's also a part of our education and how our community was shaped for so many centuries. But I mean, we're all alive and we are a part of this world and we are all together. I mean, so
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
how they're learning that they're part of this world and they're human beings and you're also human beings. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that
No,
story.
thank you.
It's really beautiful, and I'm glad that you have a solid group of people who are around you and taking care of you. That's important.
By this chance, I express my gratitude to those people who keep helping me, keep supporting me emotionally, and yeah, and thank you
Right.
for being my friend.
It's my pleasure, really.
Mukaddas, thank you so much for sharing those conversations that you had with these two really fascinating people who, in some ways have some similarities in their experiences, that they didn't set out to be political activists, but
Right.
because of things that happened to them, because of these very personal crises that they faced, they decided to step up, and they made these choices to try to help other people in their own ways. And I think one thing that hearing from both Akida and Halmurat makes me think is that everybody, there is no one way to be an activist, and there's no one way to try to help other people. And the way that we can be of most use to one another is giving what we can. And everybody can give something different. Everybody can offer, their own talents or their own time
Yes.
to what they think is important. And it's inspiring to hear people doing that in their own ways and for their own reasons, because it seems to me that this is a very large crisis, and that this is unfortunately a crisis that isn't going away, and that we need as many people offering as many different kinds of help as possible.
Yeah, sure. And as many people as possible to learn about this crisis, and then to share it with your friends, family, and your colleagues, and everyone you know, and make sure that this will not happen to other places in the world. To prevent humanity from injustice is also what is these people are doing to like to raise awareness about what's happening in Uyghur homeland, which is really unfair to any of these people in our
Yeah.
stories.
I was thinking about something you said a little bit earlier in the episode about how sometimes it being, not just being an activist like you are, but just being a person who is Uyghur can feel very overwhelming. And you said just opening up your Facebook page can be just this onslaught of negative information and terrible news. And I think that my hope, one of the reasons why I think we started this podcast was to provide a place for some stories about Uyghur life and Uyghur experience that aren't always have to be negative, that don't always have to be sad. And so, of course, today's episode is about activism, which means it's about the crisis. But I would also invite folks who are listening to this to check out our other episodes, and you can hear about amazing Uyghur artists and poets and filmmakers and all kinds of amazing things that are happening, and to try to provide a place for a conversation about the Uyghur diaspora and this community that isn't always just sort of one kind of news.
Thank you, John, for listening to these stories and sharing them with so many people. Thank you for your work.
Thank you for yours. See you next time.
See you next time. WEghur Stories is hosted by Mukaddas and John Bear. It is produced by The New While. Our audio engineer is Hashad. Our theme music was also composed by Hashad. WEghur Stories is made possible with the support from the US Embassy in Paris. For more information, please visit us online at www.WeghurStories.com. That is www.WEghurStories.com. Of course, you can find us on Instagram at WEghur Stories.